In this video, we're going to review solving systems of equations by substitution. So a system of equations is when you have two or more linear equations like we have here, and the solution is going to be an ordered pair, an x, comma y, that would make both equations true. Now, the issue that we encounter when solving linear equations is that they have two variables, an x and a y. And we can only solve an equation when it has one unknown, one variable. So what we need to do is take one of these equations and rewrite it so that it has only one variable, an x or a y, instead of both x and y. And then we'll be able to solve it. And one way that we can do that is by substitution. So if we look at this first equation, it says y equals negative 2x plus 6. Another way we can read that is y is the same as negative 2x plus 6. So if two things are the same, that means you could switch one out for the other. You can replace, you can substitute. And that is what we're going to do in this second equation in order to rewrite it so that it has only one variable. What we're going to do is, instead of y, we're going to substitute negative 2x plus 6. So let's go ahead and do that. So we have negative 4x minus 8 times y, and I'm going to put a parentheses here because I'm not going to write y anymore. Now I'm going to write negative 2x plus 6 equals 24. And we're going to substitute this negative 2x plus 6. And remember, the reason why we can do this is because this equation tells us that y and negative 2x plus 6 are the same. Now, what we need to do is follow our steps for solving multi-step equations in order to solve this equation for x. So let's distribute. We have negative 8 times negative 2x, that is positive 16x. And negative 8 times positive 6, that is negative 48. We copy down the rest of the equation. Next, we can combine like terms. Negative 4x plus 16x, that is 12x. And now we need to get rid of this negative 48, so we're going to add 48 to both sides. And we get the equation 12x equals 72. And finally, we need to divide both sides by 12. And we see that x equals 6. Now, this is only half of the solution because we still need y. So we're going to use this value of 6 for x, and we're going to substitute that into the first equation for x and solve for y. So we have the equation y equals negative 2 times x plus 6, and we know that x is 6. So now we work this out. Negative 2 times 6, that's negative 12. And negative 12 plus 6 is negative 6. So y equals negative 6. And so the solution to this system of equations is the ordered pair. And remember, make sure you do this in the correct order, x comma y. So this is 6 comma negative 6. Now let's go ahead and take a look at example number 2. We see here that this first equation says y equals 3x minus 20. And again, it's telling us that y is the same as 3x minus 20. So in this second equation, instead of y, we're going to substitute 3x minus 20. So let's set it up. Always good to use parentheses so you don't make any mistakes. So we're going to substitute, instead of y, we're going to write 3x minus 20. And now we're going to follow our steps for solving multi-step equations. So 7 times 3x, that's positive 21x. And 7 times negative 20, that is negative 140, equals 4. And over here, we bring down the negative 3x. Next, we need to combine like terms. So negative 3x plus 21x is 18x minus 140 equals 4. Next, we need to get rid of this negative 140, so we're going to add 140 to both sides. And we get 18x equals 144. Now we divide both sides by 18, and 144 divided by 18 is 8. And now that we know x equals 8, we can take that and substitute it back into the first equation for x, and then solve for y. We get y equals 3 times x minus 20, and we know that x is 8, and 3 times 8 is 24, and 24 minus 20 is 4. So we see that y equals 4. So again, our ordered pair x comma y, our solution is 8 comma 4. Now the first two examples were easy examples because both of them had one equation that said y equals. And those are easy to do because you don't have to do as much work. But if we look here, number 3, we see that neither one of these equations says y equals. All right. This first equation says x minus 4y equals negative 4. And the second equation says negative 3x minus 8y equals 12. And so in order to use substitution, I need one of these equations to be solved for a variable, which means, remember, that you need one of these equations to have one of the variables, either x or y, it doesn't matter which, to be alone on one side of the equation. And really, it's up to you which way you want to do this. However, there is one method that's going to be easier than others. So for example, in this first equation, I see that this x already has a coefficient of 1. So my easiest path here, in order to solve one of these equations for x or y, would be to solve this first equation for x. So I could very easily solve this first equation for x by moving this negative 4y to the other side of the equation. And all I need to remember in order to do this is that if I take a term from one side of an equation and move it to the other side of the equation, I need to change its sign. So if I take this negative 4y from the left side of the equation and move it over here, it's going to become a positive 4y. And so now this equation looks like this. X equals negative 4 minus 4y. And so now we see that this equation is solved for x. So what this equation is telling me is that x is the same as negative 4 minus 4y. And we can use that to substitute for x in this second equation here. So we're going to write negative 3 times x, and since we're substituting, we're going to put parentheses, minus 8y equals 12. And we're going to substitute for x, we're going to write negative 4 minus 4y. And now we follow the steps to solve this equation for y. So negative 3 times negative 4, that's positive 12. Next, negative 3 times negative 4y, that is positive 12y. Bring down the rest of the equation, minus 8y equals 12. Next, we can combine like terms here. There's 12y minus 8y, that is 4y. We bring down the rest of the equation. We need to get rid of this 12, so we need to subtract 12 from both sides. So now we have 4y equals 0, because 12 minus 12 is 0. And lastly, we need to divide by 4. And 0 divided by any number equals 0. So now we know that our y value equals 0. Now that we know that y equals 0, we can take that and substitute it into this equation or into the new version of this equation, because both of these equations are the same equation just written in different formats. And we can substitute 0 for y. Now be careful. In the first two examples, we were substituting for x. But this time, we didn't solve for x on our first try. We solved for y. So you need to make sure that we substitute for the correct variable. So I'm going to go ahead and use the original one. So I'm going to say, okay, x minus 4 times y equals negative 4. And we know that y is 0. Now anything times 0 equals 0. So this becomes basically x plus 0 equals negative 4. And anything plus 0 equals itself. So x equals negative 4. And there is our solution for this system of equations. Remember, always in the order of x comma y. So x is negative 4 and y is 0. So that is our solution for this system of equations. Looking at example number 4, we see again neither one of these equations is solved for a variable. So we need to figure out which is going to be the easiest path for us to take. And we see that in this first equation, x already has a coefficient of 1. So the easiest path is going to be to solve this first equation for x. And in order to solve for x, all we need to do is take this 6y and move it to the other side. And since it's a positive 6y and we're moving it to the other side, it's going to become a negative 6y. So our rewritten equation will look like this. X equals negative 14 minus 6y. And now we have something that we can substitute because x is the same as negative 14 minus 6y. And we can use that in this second equation. So we're going to substitute for x here. So we have negative 3 times x plus 4y equals negative 24. And we're going to substitute negative 14 minus 6y for x. And now we're going to solve for y. So let's distribute. Negative 3 times negative 14 is positive 42. And then negative 3 times negative 6y is positive 18y. And we bring down the rest of the equation. We can combine like terms. 18y plus 4y is 22y. Next, we have to get rid of this 42, so we're going to subtract 42 from both sides. And we get 22y equals negative 66. And finally, we just need to divide both sides by 22, and we see that y equals negative 3. And now that we know y equals negative 3, we can use that to substitute into the original equation or this new version of that equation. This time, let's use that. So we're going to say, okay, x equals negative 14 minus 6 times y. And we see here that y is negative 3. So now negative 6 times negative 3, that's positive 18. And negative 14 plus 18 is 4. So we see that x equals 4. So there is our solution, 4, negative 3. Now these last two examples are going to be the trickiest because, as we see again, neither one of these equations is solved for a variable. And this time, neither one of these equations has a coefficient of 1. So we're going to need to do more than just move something to the other side. And once again, we could take this in any route that we want, but we need to be careful because if we make the wrong decision, we may end up with fractions. And you could still get the correct answer with fractions, but it will be trickier. So we need to look and see what's going to be the easiest path. So if I look at the first equation, I see that my x value has a coefficient of negative 4. And if I think about dividing, well, I know negative 8 divided by negative 4, that's 2. And I know 12 divided by negative 4 that is negative 3. So I can see that if I take this first equation and solve it for x, that I'm not going to have to deal with fractions. And that's going to make life easier for me. So let's go ahead and do that. First, we need to get rid of this negative 8y. So we're just going to take it and move it to the other side. And when we do, it's going to go from being a negative 8y to being a positive 8y. So now my equation is going to read negative 4x equals 12 plus 8y. And I still need to get x alone, so I need to divide everything by negative 4. So negative 4x divided by negative 4, that's x. 12 divided by negative 4 is negative 3. And 8 divided by negative 4, 8y, sorry, divided by negative 4 is going to be negative 2y. And here we have this equation solved for x, which means we know what we can substitute in the second equation. So we're going to rewrite this second equation using parentheses. So negative 3 times x plus 8y equals 23. And we can substitute negative 3 minus 2y for x. And now we're going to solve for y. So let's distribute negative 3 times negative 3. That's positive 9. Negative 3 times negative 2y, that is positive 6y. And we bring down the rest of the equation. Here we can combine like terms. 6y plus 8y, that is 14y. Next, we have to get rid of this 9. So we're going to subtract 9 from both sides. And we get 14y equals 14. And so we know that 14 divided by 14 equals 1. So now we see that our y value is 1. And now that we know our y value is 1, we can take that and substitute it into either the original equation or this new version that we created here. So let's go into the new version, and we're going to say x equals negative 3 minus 2 times y, and we see that y is 1. Now negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. And negative 3 minus 2 is negative 5. So now we know that our x value is negative 5. And so here is our solution. The ordered pair, negative 5, comma 1. All right, in this last example, we can see once again that neither one of these equations is solved for x or y. So we need to kind of figure out which is going to be our easiest path to take. If I look on top, I can see that I have a 2x, and I know that I could divide 6 by 2, and I could divide 12 by 2. And also, if I look in the bottom, I see that I have a 4x, and I know I can divide 8 by 4 and 16 by 4. So either one of those would be good paths to take. Let's go ahead and solve the top equation for x. So first, I need to take this negative 6y and move it over to the other side. And when I move it, it switches from a negative 6y to a positive 6y. So our new equation reads 2x equals negative 12 plus 6y. And we need to divide by 2 to solve for x. We need to divide everything by 2. So we get x equals negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. And 6y divided by 2 is 3y. And now we have something that we can substitute for x in this second equation. So we're going to go ahead and write this with parentheses. 4 times x plus 8y equals 16. And we're going to substitute for x. We're going to substitute negative 6 plus 3y. And now we're going to solve for y. So 4 times negative 6, that is negative 24. 4 times 3y, that is 12y. We bring down the rest of the equation. So Next, we can combine like terms. 12y plus 8y, that is 20y. And now we have to get rid of this negative 24, so we're going to add 24 to both sides. And now we have 20y equals 40. And finally, divide both sides by 20. And we see that y equals 2. And now that we know that y equals 2, we can take that and substitute that for 2 into the original equation or this version. Let's go ahead and do the original equation this time. So we have 2x minus 6 times y equals negative 12. And we know that y is 2. Negative 6 times 2, that's negative 12. We add 12 to both sides. We get 2x equals 0. And we already know that 0 divided by anything equals 0. So there is our solution to this system. X equals 0 and y equals 2. So our solution is the ordered pair 0, 2. All right, I hope that this video has helped you to understand solving systems of equations by substitution and to get ready for your quiz. Good luck!